The reason why I'm making this video is I noticed one thing while I was going live to live, panel to panel, content creator to content creator, to eat my crow over my wrong pick about Earl Spence Jr. beating Terrence Crawford. What I noticed is boxing fans are the reason why we never get great fights. Boxing fans are the reason why we never get these fighters to risk their O's. And truth be told, they probably shouldn't risk their O's for great fights like this. Before I get into that, hit the thumbs up, sub, and notification bell. That way you get updated when I drop the newest content like this. With that being said, let's get into the video. Check this out. These guys, I put two pictures up of Fulton and Spence. These guys dominated their divisions. And now they're no good. They were in 50-50 fights that ended up not being so 50-50 because they both lost bad. They both got pretty much outclassed. However, people like to forget that Fulton, as an example, beat 9 undefeated fighters. 9 undefeated fighters. That's almost unheard of. And while not all 9 of those undefeated fighters were great, a lot of guys, especially coming up, don't risk it fighting multiple other undefeated fighters because they don't want to catch a loss on their record coming up through the ranks. So not only did he do that, but he solidified himself as being a unified champion, having 2 out of the 4 major titles, and being ranked number 1. So he's not a bad fighter. Earl Spence Jr., on the other hand, has been ruling the welterweight division for forever. Yes, you had Terrence Crawford that moved up there to fight him. Yes, Terrence had been calling him out for about 4 years, maybe 5. However, you can't take away how Earl Spence cleared everybody out but Terrence Crawford. He beat all the best guys that were considered the best guys outside of a Keith Thurman, but Keith Thurman had a bunch of injuries, so that is what it is. Thurman was away. Outside of Thurman, he beat everybody. He even tried to get in there with Manny Pacquiao. Unfortunately for him, he had a detached retina, which caused him not to get in there. But he fought everybody there was to fight that he could fight and beat them all. Not only did he beat them all, he dominated them all. Now, for the first time in his career, he goes in there with another guy in Terrence Crawford, and he gets dominated. He gets beat. Just because Fulton got beat by Inoue, got dominated by Inoue, just because Spence got beat and dominated by Terrence Crawford, doesn't mean these guys are bad. Doesn't mean they're bums. It doesn't take away from the fact of how good of a fighter they are, because they're still active. To say that they're no good, to say that they're overhyped, only takes credit away from the guys that beat them. Because at the end of the day, sorry about that, dry throat. At the end of the day, and we don't edit over here, we keep it going. At the end of the day, if these guys were no good, then why should Inoue be a pound-for-pound fighter? If these guys are no good, why should Terrence Crawford be the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter? No, the fact is, both these fighters were great. And the fact is, they should be praised for getting in there. Yes, the Spence fight took a lot longer than we wanted it to. But at the end of the day, I can make the argument that Spence really wanted to fight. He had an out. He could have went to 154 and fought Keith Thurman. He had an out. The minute that they were trying to make the fight and Terrence Crawford abandoned the fight to go fight David Avanesian, he had an out. But he stood the course and he made the fight happen. He gave 50-50 on the split, which he didn't have to do. He did a coin toss, which he didn't have to do. There was a lot of things that he did to make this fight happen that he didn't have to do. And I'm not saying Bud's not responsible for the fight happening as well, because he is. But I'm just saying that it tells you that Spence wanted to fight him. So when big fights like this happen, only in this era, the post-Mayweather era, do we say these guys are trash. Do we say these guys are bums? Whenever Sugar Ray Leonard fought Hearn, nobody was saying Hearn was a bum fighter afterwards. Hagler Hearns, nobody said. You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody said these fighters were trash afterwards. Never. Ali Frazier, nobody said Muhammad Ali was trash because Joe Frazier beat him. People still talk about how good Sonny Liston was, but he lost to Ali. The losses did not define them, did not automatically by default turn them into a bum because they had a history of what they did before they got that loss. You have special fighters that come around once in a generation. And that's what Terrence Crawford proved to be. That's what Inoue is proving to be right now. Where these guys can make elite guys look average. But just because they're special, just because they can outclass these other fighters, doesn't mean that these guys are bad. Especially Errol Spence Jr. So, again, I just want to end on this. There is no shame in losing. There is no shame in risking your own and trying to prove that you are the best. There's no shame in it. That's what used to make boxing great. When you think about the legendary fighters, all of them have losses outside of one I can think of, and I'm excluding Mayweather from that. Rocky Marciano is the only one I can think of that wasn't defeated. Maybe Joe Calzaghe, but nobody really talks about him being an all-time great, even though he was a great fighter. All your throwback fighters from the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, the 50s, so on, they all had losses. And nobody looked at them like they were trash because of one loss, because of the wins that they had on their record. We need to change this mentality. This is why UFC is killing boxing right now. This is why we are losing the UFC, because the UFC fighters, by Dana White's design, the best are always fighting the best. And their best, most of them outside of like a John Jones, all have losses. All of them. And they're still thought of as great fighters. Fucking, what's his name? Randy Couture has probably got just as many wins as he got losses. And he's considered an ATG in the MMA community. So why can't we be the same? Why can't we congratulate the guy who loses just like we congratulate the winner? It's just ridiculous. And y'all are the reason why we have to wait 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years to get the fights that we really want to see.